Hey there, welcome back to the third part of our three-part mini tutorial on routing in Ableton. And I've loaded an instance of the Mix Template Pro template for Ableton, as you can see. And before I can start talking about the actual routing, let me give you a quick overview. As you can see, to your right, we have beautifully colored subgroups. In Ableton, we call them subgroups. And if you click onto one of these subgroups, for example, the keyboard subgroup, you will find that there are individual tracks, piano, synth, pads, and leads. The usual suspects you would group, if you were to mix yourself, into a subgroup, because that subgroup here might need a treatment like EQing and compression that is good for all these kinds of individual tracks. Also, and this is very important for the routing, you find a huge effects section. Let me just close that so you can see. Well, here we go. So we have lead vocal reverb effects. We got lead vocal delay effects, modulation effects, drum room effects, snare room effects, orchestral and FX reverb effects, right? And this is going to be important later. So let me, by clicking on I/O here, I can blend in the in and out routing information, just, for the sake of, for the visual sake, right? Let me just search for a piano sample. Let's switch to session view for this. So if I play the piano sample, you can see the audio goes into this, or you can see it here in the meter, but the audio does not go directly to the master. It takes a detour into the keyboard subgroup or keyboard bus. And this is something, a bus is nothing we as Ableton users are really used to. We all know buses from the audio goes from the piano track to the to the keyboard master, then goes to the mix bus instruments. So it's another subgroup that takes care of all the instruments, not the drums and not the vocals. And that again goes to the master. So we have basically 3 stages, right? So we have the sound source that goes into the instrument group. That again goes into the mix bus instrument group, where a lot of instruments like the guitar and the bass would go. And then we end up in the master. Why is that important? Well, the reason for this, kind of easy. Let me bring back in the send and return system by clicking S and R here. And I've just said kind of easy, and that is not true. What I'm going to show here is something that I was not aware of for years, and something I wouldn't have figured out without any help. So I'm very grateful for now being aware of this, and I want to share this with you. And if this insight is you already know this, that's a good thing, and I can only encourage you to share your knowledge. And for all of you who say, well, okay, what's coming up now, that is new to me, well, it saves time and it will make mixing in Ableton much more fun. Let's bring back the sends, and just a quick recap. We're used to those sends. I've talked about them in the second video, right? By pulling that fader up, we send a copy of whatever we have going on in this track to the return section. Let me blend that in. I'm clicking on R, right? See? So in the return section, in the return bus, you have on A, you have the A lead vocal reverb. Now, between you and me, it's a piano sample playing, so why should I send it to a lead vocal reverb? Okay, I could do it, but I won't, right? Let's instead send something to the orchestral reverb. So, and let's do that from the very own track. So I pull up D and see what happens. Do you see this down here? That blue meter coming up. Also listen to the audio. I will be quiet for a moment. All right. So you get the idea. By turning that send knob, we're sending a copy of the piano sample to the effects bus, actually. And this is nothing new so far, right? You go like, yeah, okay, Toby, that's nice. But still, guys, do you remember that we have a limitation going on in terms of the numbers of return tracks we can have? Here, if I blend them in arrangement view, we see 6 return tracks. Yeah, sure, I could add another 6, but that's it then, right? So 12 return tracks as a maximum. Let me take them away. And like we have seen in the last video, what if you like various instances of reverbs? If you like a hall, a church, a room, what about delays? Slap delay, quarter note, eighth note, 16th note. All of a sudden you end up having no space left for that send return system. And this is the key takeaway. We are sending audio to the return bus, that is called orchestral in our case. And that again, as it is blue, it is not in itself sending the audio to the master. What it does is, it itself sends the signal back to the effects section. See? This is basically the return signal coming into the effects section. And if I click onto that tiny button here, I see two instances of effects. And if I click on them, you see 2 effects, typical effects that could be called orchestral effects, hall and a church reverb. If I click on them, what do I see? Well, we have a plugin here with a Halls of Fame orchestra effect on it. All right. And now what's the big deal? Now dig this. The way you actually work with the effect is that effect, which is being sent from the return into that orchestral effects bus, arrives here at the same volume with hall and church. But maybe you don't want that. Of course you don't want this. This is just a starting point for you to start mixing. Dig this. You just take down the faders. See, it's dry, a dry effect. And now you blend in just the amount of effect you want. See this? You're actually fading in the effect you want. And this is the game changer, because you're not limited to hall and church. You could duplicate it. You could call it, I don't know, space. And since we're here now, let's just take another preset. By the way, we're working here with the Hall of Fame's Mark Mozart edition that comes with the Mixtemple Pro for Ableton Live. And let's just, I don't know. Let's take Dance Hall. So it's not space, but Dance Hall. And here we go. We've just added another effect. But to make things more clearly, let me apply the same effect, the same principle to... what happens if we send to B? Well, B let's open up the return bus again. B is the delay part. See, we have signal going on here. And you can already hear it. Okay, let's have a look. What is, here we go. This is where the audio comes back from the return into the actual delay bus. And now we can really like move faders. Like in a real world mixing situation on a classic console. And let me overdo things a bit. See? This is, you really just move the faders like on a console. What that means is, with that effects section and that pre-installed routing, you can easily overcome the limitations of having only 6 or 12 return buses. Simply because you can send the returns back into the effects section, which again is pre-populated with, you know, the classical, the classic effects. You know, see, this is what actually comes with the plugin. Presets, if you will, that are a starting point. It won't mix for you. It will not mix for you automatically. It's just a starting point. See, typical reverb, lead vocal effects, typical lead vocal delay elements, typical drum room effects, right? Drums. And this, my dear friends, is basically, although it might look a bit crowded, but this is due to my tiny screen here. This is basically the way a classic console works, and this is what we have emulated, or this is how a classic console routes audio, and this is what is being emulated here. This is something me as an Ableton user, I would have never gotten across that. I wouldn't have found it out myself because, you know, when you start with Ableton, and that's okay for Ableton, really. And you just, like we did it last time, you just take a plugin, or you just take you take any kind of effect, a reverb, I don't know, and you just, you know, put it onto the piano track directly. And we've seen the disadvantages of this. See video 1, right? But with that very elaborated routing, you save time because, I mean, this is your starting template. This is just your starting point. Imagine you would take care of that routing that goes from tracks to subgroups or buses per instrument, per type of instrument, into another section of buses, then again goes into the masters, and the effects section routing by send and return tracks back into that effects section. If you would do this on your own, well, I bet the joy of mixing really like goes away because, well, you don't do nothing but, you know, setting up routings. And this is what the Mixtemple Pro plugin has taken care of. So bottom line, the send return system in combination with these faders, or the way of moving faders here, and here you have another subgroup, if you will, for the effects themselves, which then go into the master. This is really the freedom you need for swiftly and intuitive mixing decisions. You don't want to sit here on an individual track and go like, and, you know, like tweak and twist knobs and go like, yeah, sounds good, but I have to apply it to like 20 other tracks as well. That's boring, that's not effective, and that is really, it's killing the vibe. But this, although it looks kind of overwhelming at the first sight, is not. It's really helpful. So I hope you liked it. Drop me a line, ask questions, and thank you very much for tuning in.